Hello to everyone who is joining our webinar today. We are going to give it just another minute or two, let a few more people join us, and then we will kick off the session. Thank you to everyone who is joining the call. We're going to give it just another minute and then we'll get going. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's webinar. This is ITM Content Creation Demystified. Today's webinar is presented by Evolve's own mechanical product manager, Seth Greenland. Now, as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and we'll forward the recording to all registrants. You can also catch this as well as all of our webinar recordings on the Evolve MEP YouTube channel. So make sure to give us a follow over there. If you have any questions during this presentation, please submit them using the Q&A function in your Zoom toolbar. We may take questions as we go, and at the end, if we don't have time to get to your question today, we'll make sure to follow up with you via email after the webinar. Great, and so with that, I am handing things over to Seth to start us off today.
All right, thank you, Marina. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I have a lot of content to cover today in a short amount of time, so I'm pretty much just going to jump right in. Hopefully, everyone is seeing my screen here. So I just want to let you all know what we're going to cover today. So kind of an overview of ITMs. I think anybody who's here probably already knows what an ITM is, but just in case, we'll just give it a high-level overview. The meat of this is really going to be ITM creation. Creating some simple geometry. We're just going to use a simple example, just a 607 long turn elbow. It's probably something that we're all using, especially on the plumbing or piping side. And then going through and adding some geometry to that item, the ID code, product information, labor, and price, just to see how all of that ties together to create what is an ITM and really the bulk of how we will be able to use it and pull information and really the whole idea behind BIM and why we need ITMs and why we use them. Also, I want to, hopefully I'll have time to touch on the Autodesk MEP Fabrication Data Manager, because there's a really interesting part of this that ties directly into content creation. And then I'll shout out an office hours that I previously had done for more information. But again, just kind of jumping right into what is ITM content. I'm not going to read this whole thing. Basically, ITM is short for item. It's an Autodesk item that's used in 3D, CAD software, CAD MEP, SMEP, and CamDuct. If you're interested at all in learning more, I'll put this up on the screen here. I can even put this link in. This is just directly from Autodesk and just really what an ITM is. Again, I think if anybody's here, you probably already know what an ITM is and want to know more about how they work. So let's see. Yeah, let's jump right into the practical example here. Now, broadly, we're talking about ITMs and how they interact with Revit. And that's going to be, pretty much where a lot of us are going to be using these ITMs, but short of, again, that last example that I want to hopefully get into with the Autodesk Data Manager, we're going to be editing and creating our ITMs in the AutoCAD or CAD MEP environment. This can be done in SMEP and CamDuct. For this example, I'll be using CAD MEP because I think it's probably the thing that most of you are using. Let's see here. Let's see here. I already see some questions coming in specifically on a specific type of ITM. Ryan, I'm gonna hold on to that question until the end, and we can hopefully get through as many questions as possible. But I think we should be able to address that. So anyway, jumping in. So in this example, I'm going to be going through something that I think a lot of us run into is we have something very similar, this long or this short radius 90. This is just a standard 607, but I need, say, the long term. For some reason, I don't have the LT version of this. So we want to go ahead and create that. There's two ways we could do that. One, we can find this item in folders, right-click, copy, or copy it from another manufacturer and edit the information uh, to make it fit our needs, which can be beneficial, but sometimes creating a new ITM is actually better for a few different reasons. Because sometimes, especially if you're copying from another manufacturer, let's say I grabbed a Mueller fitting that's going to be very similar to my Nibco, and I manipulate it geometry wise to make it the new Nibco elbow that I need. But in my reports, is it going to show up correctly? Is it going to show up correctly with my labor, with my product code and long description in Revit? And this is really where what I want to touch on broadly with this webinar. So let's make a brand new fitting rather than copying from an existing. I think it'll give a better picture on how it all ties together. So the first thing we want to do is see what CID we're working with. We know that this 90 is pretty close to what we want, so I'm going to go into Properties and go to my General tab and look at the CID, that 2097. I could even copy it from here and paste it in where I need it, or just remember 2097. So I'm going to create a brand new ITM. To do that, I'm going to do create make pat, excuse me. So I'll do just in the command line or anywhere in my drawing area, type in make pat, short for make pattern. It's going to prompt me for my pattern number, and I know that's, oops, I didn't like a paste. Let me repeat that. Make pat, and it was 2097. And we start out with the basic elbow. This is what it's going to look like when you just do a make pad on a 2097. We can kind of see what we have here, our bottom diameter, top diameter. We can do a reducing elbow with this one. We can adjust our angle. We can adjust top, our bottom and top extensions separately. So the first thing I like to do is just kind of get this to a size and shape that I'm going to start working with. So in this case, I'm just going to do a couple of sizes. I'm not going to do every size for this elbow. That's way too much for, a half hour here. I'm just going to do a 1 and 1.5 inch elbow here. So I'm going to start out with a 1 inch top, 1 inch bottom, center radius, I don't know, maybe 2, just something reasonable. 90, this is only a 90, so I'm gonna just lock down that dimension. My top and bottom extension, probably I'll just make them 1 and 1, just to give me something close to what I'm going to end up with. And I hit my refresh button, and you can see that's probably a fairly accurate representation for a long-term elbow. Another thing that's going to be really helpful is if I make sure that I have my annotate on. See, there's this button here with the A. That's just going to tell me what dimensions are where. It's going to be really helpful in building this out. So from here, I'm going to click OK, because if I were to hit cancel by mistake or escape out, I lose all my work. So it's important here to occasionally just hit OK and save progress. So new ITM, I'm just going to put it in this folder just so it's easy to find for this example. And I'm going to name this 607-LT. And we'll just kind of make note of that mental note so that later on we can kind of see where long description comes in. And that'll make more sense here in a minute. So 607 LT, I'm going to right click this and edit again. So I can go back in. And let's see, a couple other things I want to look for here. This is, I need to consider, this is a piping item, so I want to apply a specification. So I'll come in here and apply my general pipe work. This could be different in your database, but typically we want to apply a specification to a piping item. Duct to keep that wide open and let the specification drive it during placement, but with a pipe, it's generally more static. So material I also want to apply here. I'm going to go pipe work, and this is copper. And for my type, for my actual spec or gauge or schedule, I'm going to do a rot. So this is a rot fitting. It might be CTS or copper tube standard for you. It could vary depending on your database. I'll also just go ahead and hit redraw, and you should see it actually upped in size a little bit because that took on my material specification. And we could spend 3-4 hours on spec and material and all that, what all that means. But just broadly, we'll leave it there for now, assuming it's a specification I already have. Another thing I want to do here is go ahead and apply my connector. You can see these are just standard connectors. I know that just from experience, my connector 1 and 2 are what I want to apply my connectors to. And I know from experience that I'm going to be looking for a soldered copper hub. So I'm going to apply that to both. And you'll see kind of what happens here once I apply those and hit redraw. So I'll hit redraw, and you can see that those come in. You can see my F1 dimension here is actually longer than my cup on this fitting. And that's just because, and we'll actually do this, and once we start building this fitting out dimensionally, that F1 and E1 dimension are actually going to end up matching our cup depth on this one. So, and our C2 will be very important here too. Okay, I've got kind of my 1 inch mocked up here. So my next step is going to be to product list this. I'm going to have more than one size per fitting. So I'm going to need to product list it. If we look at, a fitting like this, I have this drop down here, and I have all my different sizes that I can select. And that's what we're going to be mimicking here. So I'll click OK. So I'm going to right click on this again and create product list. And now you can see I have a drop down, and there's nothing in it. So we'll start to build that out. But before I do, I'm going to click OK just to save this ITM. I'm just going to save it right over the old one, or right over the one that I started with. It's asking, do I want to overwrite with the existing image? And yes, we can do that too. That way it looks a little bit more accurate to what we're actually working with. All right, let's start building this out dimensionally, and then we'll go in to talk about tying in the ID so that we can build out a map prod or product information, and then pricing it or labor information too. Okay, so I'll go ahead and right click and edit again. And this time I want to come into the edit product list, and we'll start building that out. Like I said, I wanted to build out the 1 and 2 inch size. So I have the cut sheet open here. We have 1 inch and or 1 inch and 1.5 is what I'm going to do rather. And so we need a couple of critical dimensions from this. One, of course, we need to know the diameter. We know that. And we need to know the C and D dimension. And if we notice, this is essentially a center to end dimension minus the cup, the cup for the fitting. So kind of need to look at this in two different ways. So we'll keep that in mind when we build out this product list. All right, so let's see here. Let's go back to CAD, and I'll start my sizes. I'll just do new, I'll do 1 inch, and I'll do 1.5 inch, 1-1-2 inch. And this is going to be my description, essentially, my size description. In CAD, if you're building out a report, it's called description. And that's why I actually do the inch mark in there. It indicates to the end user or whoever's consuming this, maybe it's somebody putting this spool together, or this fitting together in a spool, it tells me that that is a size. So let's build out my columns. I'll do a new column, and my dimension is going to be bottom diameter. That's good. Now, I could lock out top diameter and just do that equals bottom diameter if this was only going to be a straight size. Now, this fitting does have reducing sizes, so I'm actually going to put in another column for top diameter so that I can drive those two separately. So I could have a 1/2 inch top diameter and a 1 inch bottom diameter, for example. So we'll add another one here, center radius. That's going to be important because that's going to be essentially my center to end dimension, that dimension that NIBCO gives me in the catalog. So I'll say OK there. I locked out my angle dimension. So if I hit this new, it should skip right over that one and go straight to bottom extension. I'll add bottom extension, and I'll go ahead and add top dimension, because again, we can have two different dimensions for this top and bottom extension because I have a reducing fitting. So I'll go ahead and do both of them here. Now I can start building out the dimensions here. So for my 1 inch top and bottom diameter, I'll do 1 inch, 1.5 for my 1.5 inch center dimension. Let's take a quick look at that. For 1 inch, it's 1 7/16, and for my 1.5, it's 2 1/4. So 1 7/16, I think, is 1.4375. And we'll need to do that for top and bottom. 4375. Oh, I forgot. What did I miss? I missed. Oh, no, that's right. Okay. I just didn't want to put that in there. Let's put that back to 0. And for this one, the center dimension for 1.5 inches was 2.25. Now, bottom extension and top extension. I mentioned previously we wanted to match that to the cup length. So what we can do, I'll just click OK. You can see that looks a little funky there. We need to modify that. We can get that dimension by looking at our connector. So I'll come into my connector. It's going to take me right to it, double click, hit breakpoints, and you can actually see my extension. My B extension is actually going to be my top and bottom extension for my fitting. So for my 1 inch, I have 0.91, and for my 1.5 inches, I have 1.09. And I've actually taken a screenshot of that so I can reference that when I'm entering those dimensions in. So I'll say OK and close and OK and come back into my product list, and my bottom dimension or extension here for my 1 inch is 0.91 and 0.91. I see a question here. Chris Nash, good to see you in here. I haven't seen you in a long time. Anyway, yes, you can certainly, that is an option. There are reasons not to use auto extension, auto on the extension. Um, I'd say 9 times out of 10, it's going to work just fine for you. Um, there are cases where you would want to make this extension different than the cup. So that's a great point, and you could certainly do that if it's within the spec of the part you're building. But that's a great point. So for 1.5 inches, let's see, 1.09, 1.09, and 1.09. So let's take a look at our handiwork here. So we can see our 1 inch, we have our 1.5 inches, and the extensions are working accordingly. So I think that's a pretty good start for our fitting. Now that's only half the battle. I can use this. Let's go ahead and add this to my service and take a look at what it looks like in Revit. Go ahead and add this to this service. Click OK and OK. We'll hop into Revit. I'm just going to refresh this setting so that it shows up in my service. Reload config. And we have the long-term 607 here. So I'm going to go ahead and place this in my project and look at my schedule. And this is to illustrate my next point. You maybe have copied geometry from a different fitting, pasted it, manipulated the geometry, but you come into Revit and you look at existing schedules, it's maybe not correct. Now notice here, I only have 4 items in my project. I have this pipe, this T, this union, and now my elbow. But when I look at my schedule, I have 4 items, but nothing is coming in here for my size or my description. And that's because I only did a quarter of the work. Like I said, that geometry is only one part of it. Now we need to go in and create a product ID and link that up in my map prod or product information, and talk about how we can add that to the labor and pricing information too. Time constraints we might not be able to get into at all, but hopefully through the example of the product information, this should all tie in, and it should make sense. So I'm going to open up my product information editor. I actually already have that open, but if it's not open, you can find it with product information editor, just typing that in the start menu. So I'll go ahead and look at this, and I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom and just create a couple of new entries. Actually, before I do that, let me add, I want to add my ID column. And the ID column in the product list is really what's going to tie everything else together with pricing, with MapProd, um, and multiple other places. And you can also use this in so many other ways using parameter sync to pull in extra information that Autodesk Fabrication didn't give you that Evolve can actually reach into. So I'm going to add a new column. And it's not a dimension this time. We actually want to come into the drop down and click ID. My initial value, I'll just again keep that blank. And this ID can be anything. It could be my name, it could be my address, it could be just, company abbreviation and a number that you've made up. For ease of illustration here, I'll just do 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, and 6. It just has to be the same wherever I'm trying to reference it in my database. All right, so I'm going to click OK and OK. And now I'll come into my MapProd and my product information editor and create a couple of new entries. So my ID, I can do 1, 2, 3. And I won't fill all of this out, just the relevant important information here. I'll do plumbing. This could be mechanical. It could be plumbing. Manufacturer. I'll do NIBCO. This is pipe work. Description. Here's my description. So I'm going to give it a 607-LT. I'm also going to put my connector information. So C by C. I'm going to put that in here. And the reason I'm calling that out specifically is so that we can see the name come in to the schedule, the Revit schedule that I was working with. I'm also going to do 1 inch here for my size. All right. I think the rest of it I'll just leave blank here. I'll also do my 4, 5, 6 for my 1.5 inch size. Again, I'll do plumbing, NIBCO, pipe work, 607. I want the same name here. And this one I'll do 1.5 inch. All right. So I'm going to save this, file save. And I'm just going to go ahead and close that out. Okay, now I'm going to come back into Revit. And I'm going to reload my database. You can see still no description. Come back into level 1 and reload my database. And hopefully it's all going to populate just fine. Sometimes I've noticed I'm not sure exactly what triggers it all. As far as what if I need to close out and come back in or not. Let's just delete that. I'm just going to replace this. I'll do another instance of the 1.5 inch. And look at my schedule again. There we go. Okay, so now that same schedule, you can see that I have a description. I also have varies. That's just the way my schedule is built. If I, were to delete out, say that 1 inch, we should see that we get a size now 1.5 inch. So again, the creation of the actual geometry of the ITM, that's only half the battle. It's really really a third of it, I guess, if we're thinking about it in the geometry of it is 1. The information for product information is 2 for scheduling, and the third would be for for my pricing information. Now, I won't have time to actually go through. I want to leave a little bit of time for a question or two here. But in my main database, in my costing, if I were to go into my installation times, I could create a new table that references my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 those IDs. I could create a price list that also references those IDs, and that's how it's going to tie all of that information in together. Just really quickly too, another wrinkle to just get you something, just get you thinking about this. You can now edit information in the Autodesk Fabrication Data Manager. If you have a cloud database that you're managing, you can edit this information here. That you can see this NIBCO 607 long-term elbow. I can actually come in here to my components, parts, and edit product entries, my size. So for my example, for my 1/2 inch here, I could do that, turn that into a, let's see, a 0.5 and apply. You can actually see, oops, that actually updated that information, updated that size. So you can see, like I said, I don't have a ton of time to go into it, unfortunately, but just to get you thinking about something else. The last thing I want to touch on, I know we covered a lot of stuff really quickly here. I did an office hours on this maybe a month or so ago. So if you are a current Evolve customer, I spent almost an hour just doing a valve, just the geometry. So we are looking at all those different options and things. Chris brought up a great point about auto extension. I don't think that I necessarily went over auto extension, but you'll notice when creating or editing an ITM, there are all kinds of different options, and I hit on a lot of those different things about like calculating, doing calculations and dependencies. I talked a little bit about that. So if you're interested in learning more, you can go check out that office hours. So last few minutes here, let me look at the questions that we did get. So Ryan, right off the bat, is it possible to create a combination of a clevis hanger and an insulation saddle using 2 separate ITMs, or does this need to be done in one single ITM? Great question. If we were back in the old ITM in CAD MEP days, you could use subassemblies to do something like that. Unfortunately, with Revit, you're not going to be able to do that. You could theoretically use Revit groups. That could be an interesting way to do it, using 2 different ITMs. With 8.0 coming out, the new release that we have coming out, we're actually allowing you to use Revit groups in the family browser. So if we look at utilities and the family browser right now, it's just individual families. I suppose in theory, I haven't tried it, you could create an ITM hanger with an ITM insulation saddle or shield with a Revit group and place it using Revit groups, but it wouldn't work with like our automation tools for hanger placement. So I hope that answers your question there. Let's see here. Another question here from Ryan, not related to ITM creation. Is it possible to set up a hanger schedule in CAD MEP to have it work in Revit where it will place hangers automatically? I've tried many different things, could never get it to work. Not with Revit, native Revit. You certainly can using ITM hangers and our hanger specifications with Evolve tools. There's 2 tried and true methods that you can automatically place hangers. Again, it wouldn't take directly from your ITM specifications in CAD MEP, but you could certainly mimic them in ITM hangers. I don't have any hangers in here, so I can't show it to you really quickly, but if we look at like item specifications, it's upgrading a bunch of stuff. I didn't have that set up, but we could actually look at this. Here we go. Basically, we set up different specs. So what size do you want to use what hanger on what surface, essentially. So I think that's what you're looking for there. Question from Philip for Amber. Question for Amber. Why can't I change fallback angle to 30 degrees? Okay. Great question. Yeah, it's outside of this. Yeah, okay. So I think, are we talking about the, let's see here, would that be for our insert offset? I know we have our fallback angles. I don't know if, is Amber here? I know we're kind of right up to the minute here. Every time I type in 30, it'll change to 49. Interesting. Yeah, we might want to have Amber or somebody from support follow up with you on that one, Philip. Yeah, I'm just not quite sure where you're talking there. Excellent. Yeah, Philip, we'll have somebody reach back out to you. Excellent. And yeah, Ryan, great. Glad you appreciated. Sounds like I was able to answer the questions for you. So, yeah, we are right up at that 12:30 or that half-hour mark here. I want to respect everybody's time. Marina, did you have any other housekeeping items here?
Nope. Just to say thank you, everyone, for attending the webinar today. And I'll just restate what we did at the beginning. This recording will be available on the Evolve MEP YouTube channel. If you're not already following us over there, we're posting all kinds of, webinar recordings, helpful resources, demos. There is great stuff. So make sure you follow us on YouTube and LinkedIn, where we announce upcoming events, webinars, and more ways to find those resources. We have included a link in the chat here if you want to meet with our team and learn more about how Evolve content can make your projects just high quality and blow the competition away. So thank you, Seth, and thanks for everyone for attending. Have a nice day.